You know, in my business, you see a lot of things come through the door. Old swords, signed guitars, you name it. But every now and then, something truly special appears. Something with a story that's almost too good to be true. Imagine a kid in the 1940s getting a shiny penny. He looks at it. It's not the weird silver-colored one all his friends have. It's a normal copper penny. He thinks nothing of it. Puts it in his pocket. That kid could be holding on to something worth more than a house. That's the story of the 1943 copper penny. It's a coin that, by all accounts, should never have been made. And that's what makes it one of the holy grails for coin collectors. Let's go back in time. It's 1943. The world is in the middle of World War II. America is in full-on war production mode. Every resource is critical. Everything from rubber to sugar is being rationed for the war effort. The government needs every last bit of metal it can get its hands on. They needed it for tanks, for planes, and especially for ammunition. Shell casings and telephone wires were essential for our soldiers overseas. And what were they made of? You guessed it. Copper. The same metal used to make our common, everyday penny. The government had a big problem to solve. The US Mint had been making Lincoln cents out of a bronze alloy which is 95% copper since 1909. They were as common as dirt. Nobody thought twice about them. But in 1942, the War Production Board realized that every single piece of copper was vital. They issued an order. The US Mint had to stop using copper for pennies immediately. This was a huge deal. The penny was the most circulated coin in the country. People used it every day. The government needed a cheap, effective replacement that wouldn't interfere with the war. They needed a new kind of penny, and they needed it fast. So, the decision was made. For the year 1943, the Lincoln cent would be struck from a different material. After testing a bunch of options, they settled on zinc-coated steel. These new pennies looked strange. They were grayish silver and shiny, often mistaken for dimes. People called them steelies. They were magnetic, which was a problem for vending machines. They also rusted easily, especially when they got sweaty in someone's hand. But they did the job. They saved a massive amount of copper for the war. For 1 year, and 1 year only, the American penny was made of steel. Or so everyone thought. So, how did a few copper pennies get made in 1943? It's a classic story of a simple mistake at the US Mint. You have to remember, these mints were massive industrial operations. Big loud machines were stamping out millions of coins a day. At the end of 1942, when they were switching over from copper to steel planchets, those are the blank coin discs, it was a chaotic process. The workers had to empty out all the huge hoppers that held the copper blanks. They were supposed to make sure not a single one was left before they loaded in the new steel blanks for the 1943 run. But a few of those old copper planchets got left behind. They were stuck in the corners and crevices of the giant machinery. Nobody noticed them. They were just a handful of copper blanks mixed in with millions of steel ones. When the machines fired up to start minting the new 1943 steel pennies, these leftover copper blanks went right through the process with all the others. The dies, which had the 1943 date on them, came down and stamped the image of Abraham Lincoln onto these copper discs. Bam! The 1943 copper penny was born, an accidental treasure created in the heat of wartime production. At the time, nobody knew this had happened. It's estimated that maybe 40 of these error coins were made across the Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco mints. A tiny number. They were mixed in with the billions of steel cents that were shipped out across the country. They just looked like a normal penny, so they went into circulation without anyone batting an eye. It wasn't until a few years later, in 1947, that the coin collecting world started to catch on. Rumors started to spread about a 1943 penny made of the wrong metal. People started checking their change. The government initially denied that any such coins existed. A US Mint official even said they were fakes. This just added to the mystery and the excitement. Imagine the thrill of the hunt. People were sifting through jars of pennies, hoping to find that one coin that wasn't supposed to be there. It became a national treasure hunt. Kids would ask for their change in pennies just to check the dates and the color. The legend grew and grew. And as with any legend, the value started to climb. This simple mistake turned a 1-cent coin into one of the most sought-after rarities in American history. You gotta love a story like that. The stories of people who found these coins are the best part. They really show you how life can change in an instant. One of the first famous discoveries was by a teenager named Don Lutz Jr. in 1947. He got a 1943 copper penny in his change from the school cafeteria. He was a kid who collected coins, so he knew something was off. He asked the Treasury Department about it, and they basically told him it wasn't possible. But Don knew what he had. He held onto that coin his whole life. He never sold it, even when people offered him huge amounts of money. After he passed away, his family put it up for auction in 2019. It sold for over $200,000. Then, you have guys who stumbled upon a fortune without even looking for it. There's a story about a man in California who found one in a roll of pennies he got from the bank. He almost spent it before he noticed the date and the copper color. He took it to a coin expert, and sure enough, it was the real deal. These discoveries weren't just happening to collectors. They were happening to everyday people who just got lucky. It's the ultimate attic find story. You're just going through your grandpa's old stuff and find a little coin that turns out to be a winning lottery ticket. It's the American dream, right there in the palm of your hand. Of course, with a high-value item like this, you get a lot of fakes. You wouldn't believe how many people have come into my shop with a 1943 copper penny that isn't real. The most common fakes are steel pennies that have been plated with copper. A simple magnet test can expose those right away. A real copper penny won't stick. Others are more clever. Scammers will take a 1948 penny and try to alter the 8 to look like a 3. You need an expert with a magnifying glass to spot those. It takes a trained eye to see the tiny imperfections around the date. That's why authentication is so important. The hunt for these pennies is still going on today. Think about it. There could still be a few out there, sitting in an old coffee can or a forgotten piggy bank. Every time the story of the 1943 copper penny hits the news, people start looking again. It inspires a whole new generation to check their change. It's a treasure hunt that anyone can join. You don't need a map or a metal detector. You just need a little bit of patience and a whole lot of luck. It's one of the reasons coin collecting is so much fun. You never know what you might find. So why is this little piece of copper so valuable? It comes down to the three things I always talk about: rarity, condition, and story. First, rarity. With only about 40 ever made, the 1943 copper cent is one of the rarest coins in US history. Compare that to the billions of steel cents and other copper pennies minted. The odds of finding one are astronomical. It's a simple case of supply and demand. Lots of collectors want one for their collection, but there are hardly any to go around. That scarcity is the #1 driver of its price. It's the superstar of error coins. Next up is condition. In the coin world, condition is everything. A beat-up, scratched, and corroded coin is worth a fraction of a pristine, uncirculated one. Most of the 1943 copper pennies that have been found were in circulation for a while, so they show some wear and tear. But the few that were preserved in mint condition are the ones that command the highest prices. The single best-known example, the one found by Don Lutz Jr., was in amazing shape. That's why it sold for so much. An even better one, graded by experts as being in near-perfect condition, sold for an incredible $1.7 million back in 2010. That's the $1 million penny, but you can't forget the story. The value isn't just in the metal or the rarity, it's in the history behind the coin. It's a tangible piece of World War II history. It represents a unique moment in time when the entire country was focused on a single goal. The coin is famous. People who don't know anything about coin collecting have heard of the legendary 1943 copper penny. That fame adds to its value. Owning one is like owning a piece of American folklore. It's a conversation starter. It's a story you can tell your friends and family. You're not just buying a coin, you're buying the legend that comes with it. Today, in 2026, the obsession with the 1943 copper penny is as strong as ever. It remains the ultimate prize for collectors, a symbol of how a small mistake can lead to a massive treasure. It reminds us that history is full of strange little accidents, and that sometimes the most valuable things are the ones that were never supposed to exist in the first place. So, next time you get a penny, take a second and look at the date. You probably won't find it, but you never know. And that possibility, that tiny glimmer of hope, is what makes this story so great. Because in my business, You learn that you never know what is gonna come through that door.